5 scores! Rick Bond.
We decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick 5, Gary 9.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 58 of the Squid and Ultimate Leafs Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, how we keeping? How's those peepers of yours doing? They look a little red.
I'm doing okay, except I got a little sunscreen in my eyes today playing golf, so they got a little red and a little bit sore. So I'm fine. I'm working it out here. It's coming along.
Well, you're used to battling through injuries, so here we go. Like you're just keeping right in script with what you've done your whole career. So good on you, my man.
Absolutely.
Well, today our guest is another product of Scarborough, Ontario, my old hometown. Another good old Scarborough lad. Played on a very talented Seneca Nats Junior B team that featured a very young Wayne Gretzky. Our guest was the MVP of that hockey club as a defenseman. Put up some pretty big numbers. A terrific junior career with Peterborough Petes, competing in 3 Memorial Cups in a row, winning in 79. Drafted 49th overall by the Chicago Blackhawks in 79. Enjoyed a 13-year pro career. Dabbled in media in the 1980s with Hartford while he was playing for the Hartford Whalers. And today is part of the Chicago Wolves broadcast team. Welcome to the Squid and Ultimate Leafs Fan Show, Billy Gardner. Guards, how are we keeping? How you been keeping up with that golf game with everything going on?
Not as much as Squid. I know that. I know he plays a lot. No, but and if my eyes are red, it's not because of sunscreen.
That's spoken like a true Scarborough lad.
No kidding. And a Scotsman. I'm playing twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, and really enjoy it. I'm not here to brag, but I had my best round ever. Maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a eagle and 4 birdies and shot 67.
What course?
Caroline, and I'm actually playing there tomorrow. So, yeah.
Ooh, Squid.
Is that a mini putt?
It was only 9 holes, but come on, it was only 9. It was so unique. It was one of those situations where, when you maybe have a couple of birdies early and you think, God, this might be the best round I'm ever going to have, and then you get ahead of yourself and you screw up somewhere. I thought about that, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to put that negative thought in my head. I'm just going to go out and keep hitting it like I am, and I was able to do that. In fact, one of the holes that I eagled was from the fairway. It was a wedge into the green, and we couldn't see the hole. When I got to the green, I thought, geez, I thought I had a good shot. And I thought, maybe it's in. And if it is, here I go. I'm on a nice roll. So, pretty cool.
Well,
that is pretty cool.
That's a pretty good shot right there, man. Oh, man. So I want to get back to, this pandemic has obviously created a lot of challenges for you in your other professional career. Maybe you're going to be a professional golfer after all of this. How did you find last year working in the itch? I know you're doing a lot of it from home,
right,
but how'd you get through all of that?
Well, home games, in fact, as you know, Mike, I had it for about 3.5 weeks, right before Christmas. And I went to the hospital, and I wasn't in good shape. And I actually thought I was in trouble. My sister-in-law came over. She's a nurse, and she took my oxygen, and it was below 85. And that's a criteria that you don't want to have. You're supposed to be 95 to 100. But anyway, she said, we should go to the hospital. And I said, I don't think I want to do that. I was afraid.
Yeah.
She said, well, if tomorrow it's the same, you got to go. And it was actually below the 85. So I went, just spent the day, was on oxygen. They did all the tests, x-rays, all that stuff. And they said to me, they thought I was over it because I had taken almost 2 weeks before I went in. So I was dying.
Oh, boy.
Laying there,
man,
doing nothing and dizzy as heck, hurting, everything you could think of. And then I went in, they thought I was over the hump. So anyway, so that was tough. So in the meantime, in the American Hockey League, they were discussing playing, and it actually started February 4th. So in mid-January, they were talking about scheduling and stuff like that. And I said, well, why don't the home teams just do the broadcasts? And that way you don't have to intermingle and there's no problems with travel. And they thought it was a good idea, but none of the guys that do play-by-play wanted to do that. They wanted to do all the games. So I said to my, team, I said, I'd rather not after what I went through. And they said, fine, just do the home games. So I only did the home games. So that was okay. Obviously there was nobody there. There were some scouts, but it was just an empty building, and we were playing in a practice facility with really no stands, and it was certainly a different atmosphere altogether. And the NHL played for the Stanley Cup. The American Hockey played for nothing. They gave pennants at the end of the year for finishing first and so on, but to me that was just a gimmick. It was good for the kids to play. That was much needed, but there was nothing to play for. So motivation was tough, but they did a heck of a job. I mean, we had a really good team. Well,
Rick, Justin's team, they played the ECHL guys. They played for the Cup. They cut the schedule down and cut the teams down. But, Rick, you got a champion sitting in your house. He's waiting to go and party actually later in the week.
Perfect.
Yeah, he's well, they started in February. Cincinnati didn't go in where he normally plays. And so Fort Wayne called right away, Ben Boudreau, and said, would you like to come and play in Fort Wayne? He said, well, yeah, sure. I mean, he wanted to play, and he didn't want to sit out for 16, 17 months and then try to play again next year. So he went there, and lo and behold, they ended up winning the championship, the Kelly Cup, and they had a good week of partying. And then his birthday was at the end of that week, so then that added another 3 days onto the party time.
Sure.
And so now he's home. Thursday, he's going to head down to Cincinnati. They're going to fly. They're flying to, I don't know, Cancun, Mexico, or somewhere. A bunch of them that are on the team, and they're going to have another week of partying. So good for him.
Nice to be young.
Oh yeah, nice to be 32 and be able to go out and do that again.
Well, I mean, while we're speaking of young, let's go back. This is a question for both of us, and we all can probably chip in on this one, but. Guards, I want to start off with you. To life as a kid playing street hockey, skating at all the schoolyards, on the ponds, backyards, shooting pucks or tennis balls against the basement walls.
Right.
All of that stuff we all did when we were from our generation. Would you both agree, or would you maybe not agree, that the passion we as kids attained from doing those things during those times, we don't see that today? Has that hurt the development of our kids of today?
Well, if you want me, I will go first. And I think a lot of individuals have parents that have today that love the game and have been around a little bit and kind of understand that era and not force their kids, but actually, try to help them in that respect, whether it's shooting pucks, into a netting. We've had many a young kid come in and talk about doing all those little things to help them be a better player. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is because their parents, remember what it was like maybe to live through the 70s when you could skate outside for months on end or shoot pucks. So in retrospect, yes, I would say it has hurt them because it's a little bit different. But I think there's other ways that they've been able to kind of go around those tough situations. And especially kids today that are from California or Texas, from Florida, they're all from everywhere. They can rollerblade. And that's what a lot of them started at, rollerblading. So they rollerblade instead.
They rollerblade, and then their parents shell out about 40 or 50 grand a year for them to play and travel all over the country. But you're right, Guards. I mean, I think, I don't remember ever not having a rink in my backyard. However small it might have been, there was enough room for me to shoot. There was enough room to stick handle and do a few things. So I was on the ice all the time in the backyard, honing my skill or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And, my father made sure that we had one in every backyard.
Right.
I don't see that a whole lot today. And I think probably unless you're one of those kids that can afford it, especially in, like you said, California, Florida, places like that, Texas, mm-hmm. You're not getting the ability to go out and do those types of things unless your parents can afford it. And believe me, it's not cheap for those kids in those areas to play at a high level of hockey. Is very, very expensive.
Well, where I was going with all of that was we thought about all of this was, our thought would be to get home from school, get outside to play in the street, wherever it was, include everybody on the street, the frozen toes or the pins and needles. That passion for developing for the game of hockey is just getting instilled with you every day of your life. And this is what you look forward to. But today, it's private shooting coach, goalie instructor, off-ice training. You get video replays and all this kind of stuff. And remember in our area, we go back and think about it, trying to your real way to develop yourself as your skills. Try stick handling around 12 guys in the other team with a tennis ball with the wind and the snow blowing in your face.
Absolutely.
So that's, I mean, I think I'll be, so, I mean.
Can I add something right there, Mike? You know,
absolutely.
I went to George Peck, which you know of, right at Warden and Lawrence, and I lived 8 houses from my schoolyard. I could skate on my sidewalk, and they had 3 rinks. They had a rink with hockey boards, they had a rink with smaller boards, pleasure skating, and the basketball court was for little kids. So 3 rinks, and the parents, every night it would change, but there was a little hut. And if you got the key for that week and your dad was the guy shoveling and flooding the ice, you had the heat in that hut and you were the star. So that's what would happen. The lights didn't go off till 11 o'clock. So I'd be up there, unless we were practicing or playing, but I'd be up there till 11 every night doing that. And I've often said this, and Squid, you can talk about this too in a sense, but I've always felt that I've had some great coaches, guys I've admired, and I still think they're the greatest coaches I've had. But I say to everybody, the best coach I ever had was myself. And they say, what are you talking about? I said, if you went to George Peck School and you were in grade 3 or 4 and you were playing against grade 6 and 7s, you had to force yourself. You had to
That's my whole point.
If you wanted to play, you had to push yourself.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
was coaching. Very cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Guards. And the big thing is, like I always played against kids that were 4 or 5 years older than me, roughly, and whether it was outdoors on the rink or whether it was, playing organized hockey. So, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I taught myself how to play the game. I taught myself how to shoot. I taught myself all the things that I needed to play in the National Hockey League. And it started at a very young age. And so, I would agree. I would have to say that probably I was my own best coach, probably. And trust me, I didn't have that many good coaches either. So,
well, Garth, where I want to go with you is, when you weren't playing at George Peck or in our basement or in the backyard somewhere up at the old IBM golf course on the pond or somewhere like that, you were playing some pretty high-level hockey for minor league. And talk about your era growing up, that right up to the Seneca Nats, and where we're going to go with that team.
Yeah. Again, it's funny. I had 2 neighbors on both sides of my house that played for Wexford, played at Tam O'Shanter. And on a Saturday, as you well know, it was the house league day. And you went from morning till night and all those levels played. And I would go with them to watch because I wasn't old enough. And my dad eventually, when I was like 5, said, are you interested in playing? And I said, I don't know. And I'll never forget the first time I said yes. And we went, signed up. First practice, I had skates on. And obviously back then they weren't very good. They might have been double runners, in fact. I don't even remember. But I got blisters bad. And I said to my dad, I don't ever want to play again. And I'll never forget that. And he said, okay. That's all he said. And the next week came around and he said, do you want to go back? And I said, yeah, I do. So that was unique. But those first couple of years, I was playing house league and understanding the game. But I guarantee I would not have played or gone unless those neighbors played for Wexford and they were older than myself. So I went just to watch them. And it's funny. I don't know why some guys are better than others. I just, you think back, and I started, I was younger than everybody in my first few years. I think my first 4 years I played, I was a year younger than everybody just because I wanted to play. And again, that forces you to be better and it pushes you. And I was very fortunate those first couple of years playing for Wexford. And I think it was, I don't even know what they called it back then. I think it was AA or maybe A, but you move on, and some other teams, you look at who you're playing against, and some other teams look a little bit better, and they look a little bit more organized, and their coach comes and talks to you, and you want to play, and move on to a different team, and that's kind of what happened. And I was very lucky. I mean, I played in the Toronto Red Wings after Wexford, and then I went to the Nats right after that, 2 years after that. So just some great teams, and I had a lot of fun, but it's funny looking back, Rick, and you know this too, and Mike, obviously, you never think about anything but playing in the National Hockey League back then. Everyone says, well, what would you have done if you weren't in the hockey league? You know what? I don't know. That's all I said. I was going to be a hockey player. In fact, my dentist, every time I go, every 6 months, he'd say, "You need braces." I said, "I'm going to be a hockey player. I won't have any teeth." That's the truth. It is.
One of the things, Garge, I don't know if you'd agree with me or not, but I think when you talked about how players get better than other players, I mean, obviously, aside from skill and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I've honestly believed that you're born with that innate ability to read the game or the ability to slow things down. Like when you look at Wayne Gretzky,
Sure.
like Wayne Gretzky, I mean, I don't think he learned the game the way he played it on a pond anywhere. I think he just had that innate ability to slow the game down and to play it at his pace. And he had a great sense for where everybody was on the ice and could read the play before it even happened. And I believe you're born with that. And then, of course, you work on all the other things to get better at different things. But I honestly believe you're born with that ability.
I agree. Absolutely agree with that.
Well, and I mean, Guard's being a little bit modest. I mean, I think he's actually responsible for the way they changed things in this Metro League in an indirect way, where one year they picked all the elite players of Toronto, put them on a team. I think you were called the Eye Patch Nats.
We were.
And you guys you probably could have beat a junior team, and you guys were like 13. You guys were winning tournaments a year above. I think you won the Wrigley. You guys were, and then you went on to play for Seneca Nats, the junior B team. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that club, and especially running across the guy you were just talking about, the little skinny kid from Brantford.
Well, let me go back to that minor bantam year.
Absolutely.
Sam McMaster was the general manager, obviously, of the Los Angeles Kings with Wayne. There was a lot of controversy there with him trading him and moving on. But there was pressure for Jerry. But, there was a lot going on there for Sam. And Sam was, I think, and obviously we all know a lot of hockey people, but I think, was a mastermind. And he was with the Toronto Red Wings. He was actually the guy, when I was at him, came up to me and said, would you ever think about moving from Wexford and coming on with us? And, I told my dad, and my dad thought, are you kidding? What do you do? But that's what ended up happening. I said, yeah, I want to go. And I did. And after our Pee Wee year, and that Pee Wee year was a shame because the Quebec tournament, we weren't able to go because the playoffs ran into the Quebec tournament. So the elite level of Pee Wee were not allowed to go to that Quebec tournament. So that was one of the worst things that ever happened, I think, in my hockey career. But as we move on, Sam said to me, he said, I'm going to put together the best team I possibly can. And he brought Tom McCarthy and Stuart Smith from Mississauga, and he brought about 2 guys from every little team that was in that league. And we got together, and that first year in minor bantam, we never lost a game. We played 72 games. We tied 2. We had 505 goals for and 72 against. So it was a phenomenal year. We went to Kamloops, played in the Kamloops International Bantam Tournament as minor bantams, and won that. We won the final like 10-3. It was ridiculous. So the next year we moved up to bantams, same team, exact same team, and we actually lost 2 games. But we won we won all Ontarios and did the whole thing. And then, midget's a different year. Midget with the minor midget, 2 years kind of span changed a lot. Tommy McCarthy was an excellent player, as you well know, and was drafted in the first round in '79, like a lot of the great players of NHL. but anyway, he went on and played for North York, which was a really elite Tier 2 team. And the majority of us moved to the Seneca Nats. And I wanted to move to Tier 2, but Sam said to me, you're going to play a lot here. You're going to be recognized here, and I'll get you a job with the owner at Canadian Tire for the summer. And I said, I'm in. I made $2.10 an hour pushing a broom at Canadian Tire.
And you're a defenseman then.
It's funny you were talking about all those years because it reminds me of the 4 years I spent watching my son play with the Marlies.
Uh-huh.
And they had Tavares, they had Gagne, they had an incredible team.
Right.
And I think in 4 years, the 3 years Johnny played with them, I think they lost 1 game in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were just unbelievable. And they won the Ontario Minor Midget, the OHL Cup. They won everything. I mean, it was so much fun to watch, go and sit there and watch these young kids perform at that level, and watch how good they played together as a team and won so many games. It was just, for me, it was a real treat to watch.
Sure.
Well, guards, I want you to go a little bit into that junior B team. Now, just give people an idea. Billy ended up as a center in the National Hockey League, but at this period of his career, he was a defenseman. And just to give you an idea of this club, he played 68 games that year and had 30 goals and 72 assists. So take it from there and just talk
as a
about
defenseman.
As a defenseman.
Yes.
As a defenseman. And there was that kid we want to talk about. What was the impression of him the first time you saw him?
Well, I'm going to take one step back because I want to talk about Tommy McCarthy, who was an elite player too.
He sure was.
Yeah, he was good.
In our last game, we were in the Ontario finals, and I was a defenseman. I had 39 goals, and we were beating a team from Sudbury or Sioux in the series, and it was going to be over. It was like 7-2. So there's about 5 minutes left in the game. I have 39 goals as a defenseman that year, and I said to Tommy, I got 39 goals. He goes, follow me. I followed him on our next shift. He deked everybody and passed me the puck for an empty net for my 40th. That's how good he was, too. And then Wayne, the next year we're playing Junior B, and everybody knew Wayne because Wayne came the year before, and Gus Badali, who was all our kind of agents back then as young guys, and Gus housed him, and they brought him in from Brantford, and he let him play in that Junior B team as I think he was just 14 then. And he was unbelievable then. And I went up a few times. I played midget, and I went up a few times and played with them and just watched them. But the thing that people maybe don't realize or maybe they didn't even see, he wasn't a very good skater back then. I mean, he was a very awkward, lumbering kind of guy, but his sense, as you've already alluded to, was unbelievable. And his hands were amazing. But he got better as time went on, and he knew that's something that he had to do. And he became such not a great skater, but he could get from A to B easily. And that made him, I think, the elite guy that he was. But going back to that year, here's a funny point again, and this is not to knock him at all, but Paul Coffey didn't make our team. We only had 4 defensemen. Darryl Evans made our team as a defenseman. Now, remember, Darryl was in L.A. and color radio. So it was kind of funny that, you look at Coffey in his career, gosh. But Wayne was phenomenal. We were 15 playing against 19 and 20-year-olds. They would try to beat the crap out of us every night. And, I wasn't much of a fighter. In fact, I didn't like it at all. But I had to jump in a couple of times just because guys were getting killed. And back then you could fight forever. It didn't matter. You could fight 3 or 4 times easily in a game and you didn't get thrown out. So we got our asses handed to us a few times, but we didn't lose a lot. We ended up winning the Metro Junior B, and we lost the Ontario finals to Stratford, who were, guys who were all 20 years of age. And our goalie, his name was John Seide. So we're 15 and 16. John Seide was 21, married, and had a baby. Yeah, crazy, huh?
Well, I got one story to add to your skating there, guards. Is I know when you played with Peterborough, and we'll get into that in a minute. My dad used to go to a lot of games with your dad and watch, and he was talking to Walter Gretzky one time throughout the year, and Wayne was playing, of course, up north, playing for the Sioux, and he made a comment that he was thinking of actually going to Sweden the next year of his junior career to work on his skating, to play in the big rink. And then Nelson Scalbania came along and put a squash that was rejected put in front of him. But to your point about the skating, they were a little bit concerned of that, about not about his scoring ability, but a little bit about his skating at that time.
Yeah, he was really choppy, not very fluid. Everyone talked about his size, but I thought maybe that would be the drawback, if anything was. He was relentless. It didn't matter the traffic. He was in it all the time. But I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think I read that he took some skating lessons from a figure skater or a speed skater. There was someone in Canada that was kind of tutoring him and making him a better skater, and it certainly helped him. But I have to, and I think you know this too, but I have it upstairs. I should have brought it, but Wayne, his last game at the United Center.
It's a good story.
Yeah, should I tell this story now? Is it good?
I know. Tell it.
Okay. at the United Center, I think he had 4 games left, and every team was doing something for Wayne Gretzky, and there was hundreds of people in the morning skate, and I was doing the color back then for the Hawks. So I said, there's so many guys around. I said, gosh, I'm not sure if I'm going to get to see him. So somebody came out from their dressing room that I knew and said, Wayne's already at the bus. He wants you to go out there. So I had a stick, and this is another story. My last ever NHL game, and Squid, you might have been there, was in 1989 in February. We're playing the Los Angeles Kings. He had a hat trick. I think the score was 6-3 for LA. I have a face-off against him with 5 minutes remaining. I said, Wayne, can I have your stick? Keenan's coaching. Game ends. We lose 6-3. We're heading off. Wayne comes skating down the ice with his stick like he's going to pass the baton. I go, oh, my God, it's Keenan's. What? It was the last game I ever played. So I had that stick with me because he hadn't signed it. He just gave it to me right out of his hands. So I took it that year, and it was 10 years later, 99 from 89. And he signed it and everything. But the bus driver said to me and Wayne, he said, Wayne, can I get a picture? So Wayne comes out, and he has this camera, and he says, Bill, you get in there too. So I stand in there and get a great picture. I got a stick and everything, and that was it. So, of course, before the game, you're sitting with all the other reporters, et cetera, having your meal before, action starts. And the bus driver comes in with him an envelope, and he slides me it over. And I said, what's this? He goes, it's a picture of you and Wayne. I go, seriously, thank you very much. He goes, open it. Open it up, and he always writes, best friends always, Wayne Gretzky. I said, that's cool. Thank you, very much. Very kind of you. And he says, turn it over. So I turn it over, and the whole thing is written by Wayne. And he said something along the lines of, I tell my friends and family you were the best junior hockey player I ever played with. I went, holy shit. So I've used that many times doing hot games, back then or whatever. And Pat Foley, my partner, what happened? What happened to you? Things change. I still have it. I have it in a double-sided frame, and it's in my bedroom, actually. So it's pretty cool to have.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome. And, Wayne was always a pretty good guy for doing that type of stuff, too. And, I remember it's funny because, first of all, I wasn't there when that game happened because Mike Keenan had already shipped me out.
Oh,
yeah, that was it. And it just happened to be the day after Christmas, which was, pretty brutal. But anyway, but I remember Wayne, way back, and he wasn't. I don't think he was ever a great skater, but he just had that ability. It was unbelievable. I mean, he did get better as his career went on. I think he worked on his skating. I think he knew that that's what he had to work on. Mm-hmm. But the thing I loved about Wayne, and I go back to the World Juniors in the year
78,
2 years prior to my draft.
Right.
And Wayne wasn't even at the summer camp.
Yeah.
And he wasn't invited to the main camp before the World Juniors started.
Sure.
And then Billy DeLego blew out his knee about a week before. Wow. Well, guess who they brought in? This young 16-year-old kid. And he tore the tournament apart. He was a leading scorer and won the MVP of the tournament and everything else. So that just shows you right there. At 16 years old, he came in, and we're playing against the Russians who have Makarov and Krutov, all these Fedosov.
Yeah.
And he's dangling around them, making them look silly. And I'm like, holy cow, this is pretty impressive.
And by the way, the guy who replaced, just for the record, folks, as a footnote, Billy D that year had 89 goals and 63 assists in 52 games.
Yeah.
So pretty good company to replace some big shoes to fill. Now, guys, I want you to get into Peterborough here. You played for 2 young coaches, Gary Green and Mike Keenan. Keenan his first year, actually. There's that name again, Squid. It comes up every bloody show. Keenan, somehow it comes up. Always.
Is that when they cheated, Mike?
Exactly. That's a Mike Keenan again. Now listen, here you are. You've been a dominant player all the way up. You get to this next level. How did you adapt and working with those 2 guys?
Gary Green was, if you recall, because he ended up being the youngest coach I think ever in the national Washington Capitals. So he was about 24 maybe when he started as the head coach. And you go in there as a 16-year-old and you're looking, you don't see it that way. Maybe if you'd been there in your last year, it might have been a different story. But Gary was a soft-spoken, easy kind of going guy. And, he got a little tutelage under Roger Nielsen, and I think that's how he started. And he was the type of guy, I think he ran Can-Am hockey school forever. And he just was a smart individual. And, those 2 years were phenomenal. In fact, you mentioned I went to 3 years. The 2 we lost, I thought we should have won. And the 1 we won, I thought we would have lost. We were able to beat Prop, Allison, McCrimmon, Boschman. We beat them in overtime to win. And we outshot them like 51-20. But that was
Billy. The one you won was that in Verdun?
Yes, it was supposed to be in Montreal Forum, but the Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens went to a Game 7 and kicked us out.
Okay, I was at that game.
So was I.
Because Keith Crowder was my roommate in Birmingham.
Sure, the Bulls.
And then he went back to Peterborough in November because he wasn't playing.
Right.
And on my way back from Birmingham, I stopped in Verdun for a few days to see him and watch you guys win the Memorial Cup. That was pretty cool.
I got home from Sweden the week before from playing, and I drove down and watched you play. And you got the assist on the winning goal, but Bobby Atwell, right, scored it?
He did. Yes, he did. Bobby,
I remember that. So now I want to get into when I get the story, we're going to go with the Memorial Cup. It's been called everything, the craziest Memorial Cup of all time, to an embarrassment to the game. Just oozing with controversy everywhere. You guys were associated with it. Mike Keenan, of course, is involved.
Sure.
This is the Memorial Cup that you guys were accused of throwing a game. Maybe walk the listeners through that whole story. It's a beauty.
Well, aside from the chicken landing on my head in that one game, it was a disaster after going to the final, and obviously the home team, because of what took place, didn't get to play in the final. And Cornwall was the team that really, they ended up winning the Memorial Cup, but they probably were the least favorite out of everybody. Even in the finals, I think in Montreal, they came back 3 times to win the Quebec Junior League and weren't expected to, get out of there. So we won the first 3 games, so we were automatically in, and that's why they changed it to 4 teams, because that can happen. We won the first 3 games, and the 4th game it didn't matter. We were going to be in the final, and I think everyone, I can't remember the scores, but we were up after the first period, and I honestly had a skate issue. But that's what ended up happening. We didn't play our first goalie in that game, and like Larry Murphy, who is a Hall of Famer and junior, he was such a stud too. We didn't play a lot. They just, they played. The Peterborough Petes in my 3 years played 4 lines all the time. The only time you get extra ice is penalty killing and power play. And everybody played. And that game, the kind of last year guys, Mark Reeds, God rest his soul, and such a great junior player and a good NHLer too, was my right winger. And we just didn't play a lot because it didn't matter. The schedule. We had won. We lost our first 2 games to the Sudbury Wolves, and we never lost a game again till that game 4 of the Memorial Cup. We won every game through that streak. It was phenomenal. So it's a lot of hockey and, a lot of stress. So, Mike, he just thought it was better that don't play the first string goalie and let the other guys rest a little bit. There's no need to push and so on and so forth. And they scored on a 5-on-3, and they scored again on that same 5-on-4, I think, to tie the game. And then they beat us by 1 in the 3rd period. So, there's a lot of ways to look at it.
Yeah.
But as a coach, I don't see anything wrong with what he did. You see it in every sport now. There's games that don't mean anything, and they don't play as much. So, but it was.
Well, I got a couple of guys who probably argue with you on that, and that's Danny Daou and unfortunately, God rest his soul, Dale Howardchuk, because they both claim that you guys threw the game so that you would play them instead of the Western team, and then they came back and won the final game to win the Memorial Cup. I'm not sure that's how it went. I agree with you. If I was coaching that team, which I coached for 7 or 9 years or whatever it was, if I was in that situation, I probably would have done the exact same thing as Mike did.
Right.
I would have given guys some rest and
Yeah.
said, let's get ready for the big one.
Right.
But didn't even your own hometown reporter write a scathing article about you guys? And
oh yeah, no, he did. Mike Brophy, and Mike's legendary. I really like Mike, and he did. He thought that should not have happened, and he felt we did that on purpose and threw it and so on and so forth. And Rick, we had Danny Daou, and we did a
thing a while ago.
It's about a year and 2 months ago already. Yeah. And that was one of the first Zooms we ever did. But Danny came on, and so did Jock Callender, who played for Regina.
And Tom Curtis.
Yeah.
And Tommy Ferguson. But Danny didn't, maybe he was holding back, but he didn't think so much then when he was saying that we blew it. And I know Jock, and I see Jock a lot because he's in Cleveland, and he said the same thing. He said, I wouldn't have done anything different. And it's not like you went out there and just stopped playing and things happen. And you can write so many different scenarios with that situation. But I wish it hadn't happened that way now. Obviously you would love to have won that game, and you want to beat the best, and we end up losing again to them. So in overtime. So it was kind of crazy. But it's funny, that game we lost in overtime, and this goes back to what I was talking about. Our fourth line in overtime was on the ice when they scored. How about that? The Memorial Cup final.
Wow.
That was the Peterborough Petes. They played.
But at least you can look back and you can say we changed the way the Memorial Cup was played for ever after that. There's going to be 4 teams. There's going to be a host team, and we were part of that.
And by the way, Danny Daou, he ain't giving his ring back. No matter what you say. So it ain't going back regardless of what anybody thinks. So, Guards, talk about, you get drafted, you show up at the Hawks camp. Walk us through that whole period about getting drafted and going to your first camp with the big boys.
Well, I'll tell you a little story, Mike. You may remember this, but my room in Toronto, in Scarborough, was laden with Blackhawk paraphernalia, head to toe, every picture. Remember the SO cards and all those things at gas stations, and it was all Blackhawk stuff. In those days, as Rick, you'll remember that the draft wasn't something you went to. You got a call and said you were drafted. And I think it was in Montreal, the draft. And I got a call from Jack Davidson, who was the assistant general manager. And it was only 6 rounds. As you know, there was only 130 guys picked, I believe. And it was the first year of the underage, too. Oh, God. But it was the first year of the underage. So there was a lot of guys available to be picked. So I get a call, and it's fairly early, and I'm thinking, gosh, who is this? And it's Jack Davis. He said, we drafted you 49th overall, the Chicago Blackhawks. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, I got to go to Chicago. I went, I thought, gangsters, mobsters, what's going on? But I loved the team. It's so funny that happened. And Tim Tremper was drafted also that year, who was with the Peterborough Petes and scored 63 goals, I think he did that year. We went a day early, our first camp, and we walked downtown. We walked everywhere. And the next day we go to camp, and the first day of skating, oh, my God, it was the worst decision I ever made. My legs were like lead. And that's all you did back then is skate. Pulley was running the show, and down and back, no water, 2 hours straight. It was deadly. It was brutal. But there was
twice a day. Twice a day.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So there's, Stan Mikita, Tony Esposito, and some great players, it was terrific. A couple of guys the first day, Grant Mulvey, Ted Bully, said, come on, I'm going to take you to a nice restaurant tonight. So, those kind of experiences are just amazing and that you always remember. And I went back to junior, and I was talking to a few of the older guys, and he said, how are you really as a player? And I said, well, I'm more of a playmaker. Go back and score. They said, go back and get goals. That's what they're looking for, goals. So not easy to do either. It doesn't matter what league you're in, but it was quite an experience. The old stadium, it wasn't a very nice area. It was scary there back in those days.
Well, let me set this next question up for you. We discuss this all the time on the show, Guard. So, you were a star right from the start, right up to your first camp you arrived at with the Hawks. So your hockey career, you didn't make it immediately, but all throughout your career, you'd always been an automatic, starter on every team. I mean, it can be a devastating emotion for a player when they finally run into a little adversity at the pro level. So here you are after 1 year, you go back to junior, you play well again. Your second camp, all of a sudden you show up. They're already loaded with a lot of veteran centers. Then this kid by the name of Savard gets taken 3rd overall. If that's not enough, they also a couple other guys in the fold with Troy Murray and Steve Ludzik also. And so, I mean, what was your mindset going through all of that?
Well, our captain was Terry Ruskowski, so he was a center man.
And Lysiak was still there.
Yeah, Tommy was great. Tommy, a couple of good stories, but Tommy was the guy that actually said to me, go back and, score as many goals as you can, get noticed. So he was a centerman, but he was such a nice guy to me. And again, another guy that's passed way too early. But it was deceiving, or well, not deceiving is the word. I went back and it came, and I thought I had a chance that year just because I had a good junior year, and I know they were watching. They had a scout Chicago Blackhawks did that was at every Thursday night game, and that was our home night. So, I knew he was there, and I thought I played my heart out, and I thought I would do a lot for myself. But I did get sent down. But the big thing that hurt me that first year was, I think it was about the 6th game in. I was with Moncton, New Brunswick, and we were in Adirondack, and I got hit in the foot with a puck and didn't think much of it. And the next day I woke up and my foot was a balloon and couldn't get a skate on. And a week went by, and all of a sudden it's still there. And they sent me to Chicago, and I ended up having to have surgery. So I didn't come back till the end of January. So I actually missed a great amount of time. And, I'm watching guys going up and down while I'm out and thinking, God, that could be, But that happens, and I did come back and had a good end. And I think I led the team maybe in the playoffs for a couple of rounds. And then the next year I was able to make it. But I think that injury did hurt. There was a little bit of a drawback. But, again, your mindset's just got to be smart enough to think, positively and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Gard, you'd have to agree that, obviously you get drafted. I mean, you go to your first camp or whatever that case might be. I mean, somewhere along the line, you do need to get a break. Something needs to happen where, someone perhaps gets hurt and then you get called up and get a spot and then you play really well and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got to keep this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to get a break somewhere.
Well, my best years, Rick, I ended up playing left wing because our left wingers, we had Secord, Sutter, and Fraser. They were always hurt. And they threw me in. I ended up playing with Savard and Larmer, and, it was my best year. I had 27 goals, and I only played with them for about 20 games, but it was just so cool to play with. So, the players this is the elite. These are 2 of the best in the league. And things kind of go your way then. You work hard, and you do it as you're told, and, you get those breaks. But Orville was our coach, Tessier, and he was not a big fan of mine. He had the American Hockey League Championship the year before and had Ludzik and Larms, and Larms was a right winger, but he wanted his guys to play ahead of me, and eventually he had to put me in that position. I'll never forget, at the end of the year, playoffs are starting, and the guys are coming back. He said, I'm really sorry, I can't play you. Pulley told me I got to put those guys back in those positions, and I understood that. But it was nice of him to say that because he never really talked to me. Here's a funny story. One game, this is before all the good stuff happened. One game, he had Cliff Coral, who was an assistant coach up in the, I forget the name of it. It was in the box, the press box, but there was a name too for the press box. And Cliff came in the intermission, and Orville says, give me that paper. He shows the paper, and it's got, the goals on both ends, and it's got all these lines, squiggly lines around, kind of on the perimeter. He goes, this is one of the guys on our team. Look at it. Look where he's never in a corner. It was me. I looked at him. I said, the puck never went in the corner when I was on the ice. That's how much he didn't like me.
Funny. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned those 2 guys because when I got traded to Chicago, I was lucky enough to play on a line with Larms. And I got to say, Larms and Savard. And I got to tell you, and Larms, of course, played. Did he play in Peterborough too, I think?
He played his first year and then was drafted by Niagara Falls and played the next.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah. But anyway, I got to think he's probably one of the most underrated players ever in the National Hockey League. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
He's a point-of-game guy. I don't get why he's not there, because he was so good in his own zone as well as the offensive zone. I mean, he was just a complete player.
Yeah. Never did not get the puck out. He was so good on the board.
Oh,
so good.
he was unbelievable.
He should be in the Hall of Fame. There's not a doubt. I mean, he would have broke easily the record for most games consecutively.
Yeah.
If he did, he held out himself because he had a fight with Daryl Sutter. Daryl told him, he says, I'm not going to play as much, and you're going to be more limited. And he says, I don't want to play here then. And that's what he didn't play. He went to New York Rangers, won a Stanley Cup, and he won Rookie of the Year. I mean, he has the accolades to be in the Hall, and I think he would have been well over 1,000 games. In fact, the New York Rangers, when he retired, New York Rangers said, we'll sign you to a deal. You don't have to play on the road. You can play just the home games. That's how much they loved him.
Yeah, I didn't know that part, but I knew that he left. I think he still had a year or two left on his contract, I believe.
Yeah.
When he he won a Stanley Cup, but you know what? That's why his name was Grandpa.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, we got to get Grandpa on one of these days, Squid. But
I mean,
Guards, I want you to talk
that
about
was Lawrence.
Guards, I'd like you to talk about some of those Chicago teams. We're down to about our final 10 minutes here. Some of the Chicago teams, you guys had some really good clubs, but there was that kid from Brantford getting in your way a few times along the way. Just to speak to all of that period for you guys.
I really think if they were able to, and there wasn't, I mean, you didn't have that many moves like you do today, at the deadline or during the year to improve your club. And, I'll say this, I'm a Chicago Wolves guy now. This will be my 20th year, and I would say I'm more of a Chicago Wolves guy than that picture there with the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
I'm never proud of, honestly, a lot of things that they did as a franchise. And I still, to this day, when you see what's going on, I don't believe in them that much. But they never really made a deal because all they cared about was money. It was crazy. They didn't care about winning. They wanted to just get in the playoffs and have a couple of rounds and then go from there. And that team, with some of the players they had, they easily could have competed a little bit better. The one year we lost in 6 games, and we beat them twice. The first year they killed us. There was 11-2, and I don't know what it was. And that's when Orville Tessier said, I'm going to take the team down to Minnesota and get heart transplants. So that hurt. They got fired the next year. But, I mean, they were such a different team, I think, of that era, the way they played. Everybody wanted to emulate them because of the style they played. It free-flowing, fun, but it was hard because they were talented. And to play against them, we had Roger Nielsen, and I love Roger. And Roger tried everything possible that he possibly could think of to combat what they would do. I mean, I even actually – this is a true story. One game in Edmonton in the playoffs, I started, instead of Old Chuck, I would play with Troy Murray and Kurt Fraser, and they said to me, as soon as the puck's dropped, go to coffee and stay with coffee the whole time. That's the truth. In the playoffs, semifinals. Are you kidding? No. So a couple shifts go in, and I knew Koff very well. And Koff says, I know what you guys are doing. I can't keep up with you. Please stay with me. But they were just so much fun to watch and play against.
Yeah, they were incredible. They were, it was hard to play against them because they were so quick.
Yeah.
The ability to move the puck, it was just unbelievable. You had Gretzky, who had eyes in the back of his head, would spin around and just fire the puck over, and there's Curry with an open net. It was unbelievable, really.
Well, they were really the first to come up with, and I believe this, they'd be killing a penalty. They'd have Gretzky and Curry on the ice, and they're trying to score. I mean, there was no killing penalties. It was give me the puck. It was so different. They just changed a lot in the style of the game.
Well, nowadays you watch the game and all the top players are killing penalties.
Right, exactly.
For the most part. I don't think a lot of teams.
You really don't need 4 lines.
No.
With all the timeouts and everything that happens, the what is it, 14-minute, 9 minutes, and 5 minutes, or whatever it is. They go to commercials. Everybody's well rested. There's no need.
Well,
I agree.
We had Ricky Tocchet on last week, and Talk was telling us that, even one of the things he pointed was they were one of the first teams also to have the defenseman join the rush with Coffey, with skating like he did.
Sure.
And no other team was doing that.
Yeah.
And he just told us a story about playing the Canada Cup with Gretzky, and he was playing with Gretzky right up the bench. He kept dumping the puck, and Wayne said to him one time, "Don't give it away. Wait for me or look for Paul. He'll be right behind us."
Sure.
And he never heard of that before. And that sort of revolutionized the whole game. And look at today, the way they play.
Rick Tocchet, Jackie Page was, you remember Page's? Jackie Page was the baseball team, and Rick played. And Rick was just drafted to Sault Ste. Marie. And I used to go watch them play up at, what's the high school over there, the Diamond, the outdoor rink for McGregor. Winston Churchill, yeah. It's beside McGregor. Jackie comes up to me one day and he goes, "This is Ricky Tocchet." He said, "Will you sit down and talk to him about hockey? He just got drafted by Sault Ste. Marie. Can you help him out a little bit?" And I sit down with Rick, and I kind of knew him just from watching him playing baseball. And, he's asking questions, so on and so forth. So after, 15 years go by and I see Rick, I go, "Yeah, I really helped you, right?" 250 penalty minutes, 50 goals later. Yeah, that's a lot.
Hey, so Gards, talk to us about how you got into media.
That's a great story. The one thing.
Yeah, tell us.
The one thing I want, we collect cards as kids. We do all that. I loved getting my first hockey card. But the one thing that I wanted more than anything in my life was to hear my name shouted out by Pat Morris at Maple Leaf Gardens.
Paul Morris, pardon me.
By Paul Morris at Maple Leaf Gardens. It was just something that you hear all those, your Dave, Daryl Sittler. I wanted to hear my name. And when that first happened, that made my day. I thought, hey, I made it. That is so cool. I love his voice. But anyway.
Chicago goal by Bill Gardner.
Harvey was good.
1648.
But the media part, as you mentioned, I was in Hartford and I wasn't dressing, and they asked me to come on as a second guy. And they were playing Quebec Nordiques, and Jimmy Mann was playing. And the first couple of shifts, he wants to fight, and I said something about he's worse than a dog on a leash, and everybody loved it. They go, "Ooh, wow, that guy's funny and he's good." So kind of went from there, but I wasn't thinking about it too much. And, my last 4 years, I went over and played in Europe and had a blast. And I came back, went to Florida, and I got a call from Pat Foley, who was the play-by-play, who still is the play-by-play man for the Blackhawks. He said, "They're looking to have a pregame show. Are you interested in maybe they wanted a former player?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." He goes, "Well, you got to come back right away." And I go, "So do I get paid or anything?" He says, "No, you got to come back." I got to pay $300 and fly back. But I did, and that's how I got my foot in the door. And it just kind of led from there. I applied in Hartford when they lost Darryl Ray. Darryl went to Dallas, and I played in Hartford, so I got a little bit of an in there and had those games under my belt with Rick Peckham in Hartford. So I got that job and then moved to Carolina. So, then I came back with the Hawks, and I can tell you all the bullshit that happened with them.
Yeah.
I've been with the Wolves for 20 years. And I'll tell you what, our owner here is a real owner. He's spectacular, and I can't thank him enough for what he has done for my family and myself. Just a class guy.
I know one other individual that feels the same way. My buddy John Anderson, who coached there for many years, and you were probably doing the media there when he was there.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. No, for sure. Many of the years. With Johnny. Johnny's a great.
He still lives in Chicago.
He does. He doesn't live far from me.
Yeah.
Hey, so Guard. So we got a couple minutes left here. So some of the funnier things that happen throughout the league, we always like to get to. And who are some of the funnier guys you played with? And maybe we get into some of the pranks over the years. We've had some beauties. I don't think anybody will beat JR's fake death one, but there's been some pretty good ones.
Yeah. It's funny. There's so many you can think about and talk about. I'll tell you a little story. When I was with Hartford and I came back to Chicago in that 88-89, and Squid was there, I was with him. I'm not sure if he remembers, but the Bears won the Super Bowl. The next year they played the New York Giants, who had just won the Super Bowl after them. First Monday night game. And we're going to camp, and I'm thinking, I hear I got a shot. It's keen. I worked out, and we go to the first Monday night game in a limo and stuff, and I was polluted. Well, next morning skate, I felt like I was in some other land. It was the stupidest thing I ever did, but that's those days.
Yeah, that was back in those days. And
Oh my
the
God.
funny thing was, we're getting all this beer and walking up and down the aisle, and we're sitting in 2 rows. There's I don't know how many of us there. And then all of a sudden we look over, and there's Wirtz and Pulley sitting there. Nobody realized they were there, and we're bringing all these beers down. And everything. It was like, oh.
But one of the funniest guys, going back to just funny guys,
Yeah.
was Paul Wallace. Played in Hartford for a number of years.
Yeah, his name comes
Yeah.
up.
Just is he a Scarborough guy too?
He's a Scarborough guy. Absolutely.
He just always made me laugh. He's just a funny guy all the time. And I think, I say the story about Kevin Dineen and myself.
Tell that one.
So we couldn't skate in Hartford at the rink. At the mall, when we couldn't get on the ice, we'd have to go to some other town, but we'd all have to, go downstairs where they parked and get dressed. And back in those days, if you remember, they never took a bus. You had to drive your own vehicle. That was the same even here in Chicago. So it was one way around the mall. So we'd always try to, whether it was going or coming back, he always raced. So everyone's trying to get up the ramp, to get to the street. And Dineen's beside me. I have a brand new S10 Blazer in 1986. I turn to get on the street, and here's Kevin Dineen. He turns and he boots it instead of putting the brake on and goes right into the side of my car. Brand new car. So we all, all the cars stop and we all get out. And this is the Hartford Whalers in uniform on the street. Helmets on, police cop and everything. And Kevin had a friend there that did body work, so he did it all. But God, it was so stupid. But funny.
Well, those are the things. Now, who paid for that? You, I guess, right?
No, the guy it was a season ticket holder, just a great friend of the guys, but mainly to Kevin. So the guy did it all for nothing. So Kevin got off pretty nicely.
So while we're talking,
Yeah, he did.
who were some? Now that we got the funniest guys. Now, who were some of the more serious guys you played? Actually, let's put it this way: a guy you would look at, you could look to as admire the way he carried himself on the ice, off the ice. The game is very stressful. The term today is being a good pro.
Sure.
A couple guys like that you play with that. Besides Squid.
Not Squid. Stumpy. No, Stumpy. Honestly, probably the one that sticks out more than anybody would be Keith Brown. Keith was a very dedicated, hardworking, on ice, off ice guy. And he didn't start off that way. He was a little skinny guy when he got drafted out of Portland. But he worked his butt off, to be a bigger, stronger guy and elite guy. And he was such a team-oriented guy. He had positive things to say to everybody. He was a leader, without a doubt. But 2 other guys would be, and it's funny because they're 2 tough guys, but Al Secord, he practiced the same way he played. It was scary in drills because he would go right through you if he had you in practice. And Kurt Fraser, too. But Kurt was a softer guy in practice, but just a dedicated, tough individual that could fight. Oh, he had paws on him the size of elephants. It was crazy. Good guys, though.
Yeah, they were pretty damn big. I remember in Vancouver when I was with him there, just couldn't believe, first of all, how tough he was,
Sure.
but how big he was and how big his hands were. And I thought, okay, I don't think I ever want to fight him if I have to play against him.
Yeah, he's not the guy to do that.
Al's from Espanola, I think, up around Sudbury, and he lives in Dallas. He's been an American Airlines pilot for 23 or 24 years now. I mean, what a great story that is, too.
And by guards, we're just down about our last minute here, but actually one story I want to get to for Leaf fans listening out there. You became in Maple Leaf at the draft.
Oh, yeah. That's Sam McMaster, again, was with the Maple Leafs, and you know the story. I'm trying to think. Was it Normie Aubin? Normie
Aubin, yes.
Yeah. It's funny because Sam told me the story. When Sam retired about 2 years ago before COVID, in the December, he came into town and we had dinner and we rehashed all this. When I found out this story, he said, I wanted you to be a Leaf. They didn't have a first rounder. I think was that the way? No.
Yeah, I think Aubin was the first one, and he was going to take you.
First rounder, though? Was he a first or was he a second?
No, second, like 53rd or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So Sam wanted them to take me, and I think it was Punch or someone back then and said something about, no, we're taking this guy. You look at his, his production, so on and so forth, and you're going to go watch him play and all this stuff and make sure he's good enough and all that stuff. And Sam said he couldn't even skate. He was a goal scorer, but he couldn't skate. He said, I knew he wouldn't be able to go. He said, I wanted to pick you and take you. And I did no idea about that. And it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, that's one of the stories. But after the fact, years go by and you meet all these scouts and stuff, and you hear all the stories, and Squid, you're a great player. Everybody wanted you, but I was a guy, I was an average guy, and it was amazing after a couple of good years where I kind of filled in all these teams, Bob Tyndall in Boston. He said, we tried to get you. Pulley would never let you go. I say, he never paid me either. All these teams, you hear, we loved the way you played because of what you were able to do, and we tried to get you. And here I was stuck in Chicago.
Now, you're right about one thing. Pulley was a cheap trick.
Oh my God. Crazy. He loves golf balls out of bags too.
Well, guards, I can tell you that it's been a pleasure. Great seeing you, man. I haven't seen you for a while. Hopefully the day when we will get together in person will be a little sooner than it has been. And Squid, any final thoughts for our guest before he goes?
No, just great to see him again. It's been a while. Why? It's been a long time. And,
yes.
Take care of yourself. And good luck with the TV part. I think that's great.
Thank you. I would just like a few more years, and that's about it. I think, seriously, I think you have to appreciate what you have still and have the ability to do things. And, again, I want a little shout out to Mark Curtin as a former Leaf, and you guys very well, and I love Mark, and we talked quite a bit. And you look at his situation, and I'm thinking, you got to enjoy life while you can. So you can't take it to your grave, correct?
Well, listen, and we had Mark on the show, and if everybody had the attitude that Mark Curtin has, the world will be a better place. Trust me,
it's unbelievable.
Exactly.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, guards, thanks again. Great seeing you.
You can't put a car thing or whatever on top of your what do you call it? Casket.
No,
In other words, you can't, like, when you put on your car with everything in it, you can't put that on your casket.
No, you can't. Enjoy it while you can.
Or stuff all the money around you. So either way. Okay, guards. Great seeing you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Okay.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks,
Thanks, Darcy.